GLP-1 medications are everywhere right now, but nobody is talking about how women are quietly using them at low doses for inflammation, hormone health, and the weight changes that come with perimenopause and menopause. I want to start today by being completely honest with you. This episode is one I have been sitting with for a while, not because the topic is scary, but because I wanted to get it right. I wanted to give you real information, real research, and my own real experience, and I wanted to make sure I was not just adding to the noise that is already out there about GLP-1 medications. If you have been anywhere near social media or a doctor's office in the last 2 years, you have heard about Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, or Zepbound. These are brand names for a class of medications called GLP-1 receptor agonists. Some of them also activate a second receptor called GIP. They are being prescribed at record rates. They are being called miracle drugs. They are also being criticized, misunderstood, and in some cases misused. I'm going to walk you through all of it today. The biology, the real benefits, the real risks, the conversation around women using these medications at very low doses, what is often called microdosing, for inflammation, autoimmune conditions, and the hormonal shifts of perimenopause and menopause. And yes, I am going to share my own experience because I think you deserve to hear from someone who has actually done it, not just read about it. Here is where I need to start. I have an autoimmune disease called MOGAD, myelin oligodendrocyte glycoprotein antibody-associated disease. I was diagnosed in 2023. It is a condition that causes inflammation in my central nervous system. I chose not to go the traditional pharmaceutical route that most neurologists recommend. I am managing it naturally through diet, lifestyle, nervous system regulation, and working closely with integrative practitioners. I also had a stroke at 29 years old. It was caused by birth control pills, so when it comes to medications and hormones, I do not take anything lightly. I research everything, I test, I monitor, and I move carefully. A few months ago, I started microdosing Tirzepatide. That is the active ingredient in Mounjaro and Zepbound. I started at a very low dose, far below what is typically prescribed for weight loss, and I did it for 3 specific reasons: inflammation management, autoimmune support, and the weight fluctuations I have been navigating through perimenopause. I want to tell you what that has looked like for me, what the research says, and what you should know if you are curious about this for yourself. But first, let's understand what these medications actually are, because most of the conversation happening right now is missing a huge part of the picture. Your body naturally produces a hormone called glucagon-like peptide 1, GLP-1. It is released from your gut when you eat. Its job is to tell your pancreas to release insulin, signal your brain that you are full, slow down how fast your stomach empties, and regulate blood sugar. That is what GLP-1 does in your body every single day. GLP-1 receptor agonist medications mimic this hormone. They activate the same receptors your natural GLP-1 activates, but they last much longer in the body, which is why they are so effective at reducing appetite, improving blood sugar regulation, and producing weight loss. Tirzepatide, the medication I use, is a dual agonist. It activates both the GLP-1 receptor and the GIP receptor. GIP stands for glucose-dependent insulinotropic polypeptide. That dual action is part of why Tirzepatide tends to produce even more significant effects on weight and metabolism than single GLP-1 agonists like semaglutide. Now, here is what most people do not know, and this is the part of the research that actually got my attention. These receptors are not just in your gut and your pancreas. GLP-1 receptors are found throughout your body, in your brain, in your immune cells, in your cardiovascular system, in your lungs, in your kidneys, and that means these medications are doing a lot more than helping people lose weight. They are modulating inflammation, immune function, and neurological health in ways that science is only beginning to fully understand. Let's talk about what the research actually shows. A comprehensive review published in Pharmacological Research in 2022 examined the anti-inflammatory and immunological properties of GLP-1 receptor agonists across multiple tissues and systems. The researchers found that GLP-1 receptor agonists target different inflammatory pathways in different tissues, meaning the anti-inflammatory effect is not limited to one area of the body. It is system-wide. The review highlighted effects on macrophages and lymphocytes, two key players in immune function and autoimmune disease. A study published in Cell Metabolism in 2023 showed that GLP-1 receptor activation suppresses tumor necrosis factor alpha, which is one of the most significant pro-inflammatory cytokines in the body. TNF-alpha is elevated in autoimmune conditions, chronic inflammatory diseases, and metabolic dysfunction. The researchers found that this suppression happens through a gut-brain axis, meaning the brain and the immune system are communicating through GLP-1 receptor signaling in ways that calm systemic inflammation. There is also compelling research on GLP-1 agonists and neuroinflammation specifically. A review from the NIH's National Institute on Aging, published in Pharmacological Research, looked at GLP-1 receptor agonists and their potential in neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. The researchers noted that GLP-1 agonists reduce neuroinflammation, oxidative stress, and neuronal damage in preclinical models. They also highlighted the connection between insulin resistance, neuroinflammation, and brain health. These are not separate problems. They are connected, and that connection matters enormously for women in perimenopause and menopause. Because here is what happens during perimenopause that nobody is explaining clearly enough. Estrogen is not just a reproductive hormone. It plays a direct role in insulin sensitivity. As estrogen declines, insulin sensitivity often declines with it. That means your cells become less efficient at using glucose for energy. Blood sugar becomes harder to regulate, inflammation increases, and your body starts storing more fat, particularly around the abdomen, even if you have not changed a single thing about how you eat or move. Research on Tirzepatide has shown that it significantly improves insulin sensitivity and metabolic function. The SURMOUNT-1 trial, one of the landmark clinical trials for Tirzepatide, found that participants lost an average of 21% of their body weight at the highest dose over 72 weeks. But beyond weight loss, the medication improved fasting glucose, lipid panels, blood pressure, and inflammatory markers. These are the exact metabolic patterns that spiral during perimenopause. A review published in the Journal of Clinical Medicine specifically examined Tirzepatide in the context of hormonal and metabolic conditions in women. The researchers found that GLP-1 and GIP receptor agonism addresses the core metabolic dysfunction that underlies so many hormone-related conditions, including insulin resistance, elevated androgens, and chronic low-grade inflammation. While the study focused primarily on PCOS, the mechanisms it described apply directly to the metabolic changes of perimenopause. There is also research on GLP-1 agonists and autoimmune neurological disease specifically. A study published in International Immunopharmacology examined semaglutide in a mouse model of multiple sclerosis. The researchers found that semaglutide reduced neuroinflammation, reduced demyelination, and activated neuroprotective pathways. My condition, MOGAD, also involves demyelination. So when I read that research, it was not abstract to me. It was deeply personal. Now let me tell you about a woman I will call Jennifer. This is a hypothetical composite case study based on the patterns I see regularly in women navigating this time of life. Jennifer is 47 years old. She is in perimenopause. Her periods are irregular. She has gained 12 pounds in the last 2 years without changing her diet. She has joint pain that her doctor attributes to inflammation. She has brain fog, disrupted sleep, and a rising fasting glucose number at her annual labs. Her doctor told her numbers are not bad enough to treat yet. Jennifer does not feel like herself. She feels like her body is working against her. She exercises regularly, eats mostly whole foods, and still cannot understand why nothing is working the way it used to. What Jennifer is experiencing is not a mystery. It is the metabolic consequence of declining estrogen, meeting a system that was already under stress from years of blood sugar swings, poor sleep, and chronic low-grade inflammation. The answer for Jennifer is not just one thing. It is a combination of lifestyle, nutrition, stress management, hormonal support when appropriate, and in some cases, medications that help recalibrate the metabolic environment. Jennifer and I started working together, and she started Tirzepatide at a very low starting dose, significantly below the standard therapeutic doses used in clinical trials. The intention was not aggressive weight loss. It was metabolic recalibration and inflammation reduction. Within a few weeks, Jennifer noticed her joint pain was improving. Within 2 months, her fasting glucose was trending down. She lost 7 pounds without effort, her sleep improved, and her brain fog, which she had been attributing entirely to perimenopause, lifted noticeably. That is the microdosing conversation that is happening in women's health right now. It is not about the dramatic before and after photos on social media. It is about using a tool at a thoughtful, conservative dose to address inflammation and metabolic dysfunction in a way that makes everything else work better. Here is my personal experience. I started microdosing Tirzepatide at 0.5 milligrams per week, which is the very lowest starting point, after working with a physician who understood my goals. My goals were not to lose a significant amount of weight. They were to reduce systemic inflammation related to my autoimmune condition, support my body through the metabolic changes of perimenopause, and address the 5 to 8 pounds that had crept on and would not budge, despite doing all the right things. What I experienced in the first month was subtle. My appetite became more regulated. I was not as hungry between meals. The almost constant low-level background inflammation I had been managing, which I can feel as a kind of heaviness in my body, began to ease. I noticed I had more consistent energy throughout the day. By month 2, I had lost about 6 pounds, and my inflammatory markers on lab work had improved meaningfully. I did experience a bit of heartburn when I laid down in the first week. It was mild and passed. I also noticed that I had to be very intentional about eating enough protein because reduced appetite at a low dose can make it easy to undereat in ways that do not serve your muscle mass or your metabolism. That is something I want to come back to. I am not telling you this to advocate that you go do what I did. I am telling you because you deserve honest conversations about how real women are using these tools thoughtfully in the context of a broader approach to health. I'm still doing all the lifestyle fundamentals, the anti-inflammatory diet, sleep prioritization, strength training, stress regulation. The medication is one layer of support in a comprehensive picture, not a replacement for any of it. Now let's talk about what you need to know on the other side of this, because there are real risks, real side effects, and real concerns that are not getting enough airtime. The most significant concern in the research right now is muscle loss. The SURMOUNT-1 body composition substudy found that of the total weight lost on Tirzepatide, approximately 25% was lean mass. That is muscle and bone. This is consistent with what happens anytime you lose weight rapidly, but it is especially concerning for women in perimenopause and menopause who are already at elevated risk for muscle loss and bone density decline due to declining estrogen and progesterone. A joint advisory published in the journal Obesity from the American College of Lifestyle Medicine and the Obesity Medicine Association in 2025 stated clearly that muscle and bone loss is one of the primary clinical challenges around GLP-1 therapy. They recommended resistance training and adequate protein intake as non-negotiable components of any GLP-1 protocol. This is not optional guidance. It is essential. Gastrointestinal side effects are also very real. Nausea, vomiting, constipation, diarrhea, and abdominal discomfort are the most commonly reported side effects. A large benefit-harm modeling study published in eClinical Medicine in 2024 found that of 1,000 people treated with GLP-1 medications for 2 years, 110 experienced vomiting events, 118 experienced constipation events, and 100 experienced diarrhea events. These numbers matter. They are not small. For many women, the gastrointestinal effects at full therapeutic doses are significant enough that they cannot tolerate the medication. Microdosing reduces but does not eliminate this risk. There are also concerns about nutrient deficiencies when appetite is significantly suppressed. When you are eating less, you need to be far more strategic about the nutritional density of what you are eating. Protein, B vitamins, magnesium, zinc, and iron are the nutrients most at risk. This is particularly important for women who are already nutrient depleted from years of chronic stress, poor sleep, or prior restrictive eating patterns. There are also contraindications that need to be on your radar. GLP-1 medications are contraindicated for people with a personal or family history of medullary thyroid cancer or multiple endocrine neoplasia. They require careful monitoring in people with a history of pancreatitis, and they should always be used with regular lab monitoring. There is also the very real concern of rebound weight gain. When people stop these medications without sustainable lifestyle changes in place, the weight often returns. The research shows that the body's hormonal set point shifts back over time after discontinuation. This is not a failure of willpower, it is biology, which is why these medications are most effective as a bridge tool used alongside meaningful lifestyle changes, not instead of them. Let's bust some myths because there is a lot of noise out there. The first myth is that GLP-1 medications are only for people with diabetes or severe obesity. That is simply not what the research shows anymore. The anti-inflammatory, neuroprotective, and metabolic effects of these medications are being studied across a wide range of conditions. Women with autoimmune disease, PCOS, metabolic syndrome, and perimenopausal metabolic changes are among those who may benefit even without a diagnosis of diabetes or clinically defined obesity. The second myth is that taking a GLP-1 medication means you do not have to change anything else. This is the most dangerous misconception. Without adequate protein, resistance training, sleep, and stress management, you will lose muscle mass, create nutrient deficiencies, and likely regain the weight when you stop. The medication creates a window of opportunity. What you do with that window determines your long-term outcome. The third myth is that microdosing is not real medicine. There is a growing community of physicians, particularly in functional and integrative medicine, who are using Tirzepatide and semaglutide at significantly lower doses than what is used in clinical trials. The goal is not maximum weight loss. The goal is metabolic recalibration with the lowest effective dose and the fewest side effects. This is standard practice in integrative medicine. You use the minimum effective dose, you monitor carefully, and you adjust based on response. The fourth myth is that these medications are a shortcut. They are not. They are a metabolic tool, and like any tool, their effectiveness depends entirely on how you use them. Here is where I want to land with you today. This conversation is not about whether GLP-1 medications are right for you. That is a decision between you and a physician who understands your full health picture. What I want you to walk away with is a clear, honest, research-backed understanding of what these medications are doing in the body, why women in perimenopause and menopause are exploring them for reasons beyond weight loss, and what you must have in place if you ever choose to go down this path. Here are your action steps. These are educational points, not medical advice. Step 1, and do this in the next 7 days. Get a comprehensive lab panel if you have not had one recently. At minimum, you want to look at fasting glucose, fasting insulin, HbA1c, a complete metabolic panel, a lipid panel with advanced markers, CRP high sensitivity for inflammation, a full thyroid panel, and sex hormones including estradiol, progesterone, testosterone, and DHEAS. These numbers tell the story of what is happening in your metabolism right now. You cannot make a good decision about any intervention without them. Step 2, prioritize protein aggressively, regardless of whether you ever consider a GLP-1 medication. Research consistently shows that women in perimenopause need significantly more protein than the standard recommendations suggest. Aim for at least 1 gram of protein per pound of target body weight daily. This protects muscle mass, supports metabolism, and stabilizes blood sugar. It is foundational. Step 3, add resistance training. If you are not already doing it, I do not mean light weights, progressive resistance training at least 3 times per week. This is the single most evidence-based intervention for preserving muscle mass, improving insulin sensitivity, and supporting bone density during perimenopause. It is non-negotiable whether or not you ever use a GLP-1. Step 4, if you are curious about GLP-1 therapy, start by gathering the right information and support before making any decisions. This is not something to approach casually, and it is important that any path you consider includes proper medical oversight, comprehensive labs, and a full understanding of your health history. I recommend working with holistic professionals who prioritize ongoing monitoring, individualized care, and a whole body approach that includes muscle preservation, nutrition, and lifestyle support. If you would like to learn more about how this works, what to look for, and how to navigate your options in a safe and informed way, you can reach out to me directly. Step 5, do your own research and trust your body. I have given you the science today. I have given you my personal experience, but your body is not a statistic. What works for me may not be the right fit for you, and vice versa. Use this information as a starting point for an informed conversation with your healthcare provider. Ask questions, get your labs, know your numbers. You deserve to make decisions from a place of real knowledge, not fear and not hype. The conversation around GLP-1 medications is not going away, and it should not, because for women whose bodies are navigating real metabolic changes, real inflammation, and real hormonal shifts, having access to honest, research-backed information is not optional. It is essential. You deserve to understand your options, all of them, not just the ones that are comfortable to talk about. Thank you for being here. If this episode resonated with you, share it with a woman in your life who is navigating perimenopause or who is asking questions about GLP-1 medications and does not know where to turn. And if you want to go deeper on your hormonal health, the Living Simpler app and community are here for you. Links are in the show notes. I will see you in the next episode. Keep living simpler.